Hey everyone, I'm an OPZ superfan, and I've spent the last 2 years learning almost everything that there is to know about OPZ. I've really got a very deep understanding of it, and so I was really excited by the XY because it's kind of the next step, and I'm impressed that they've basically improved every single thing along the way and given it lots more control, lots more choices, lots more resolution. In the process, though, everything is much slower because you have more to work with. So there's only, one set of MIDI settings on OPZ for every single project you have, whereas on OPXY, that can be per project. And so everything is kind of like that, where it's like very much OPXY wins as far as comparing the specs, but if you're really wanting to move quickly and have something lightweight, then OPZ just can't really be beat by XY. But overall, there are way too many differences to talk about in one video, so this video is going to focus on sampling, which a lot of people have asked about, but also storage, because it's hard to really talk about one without talking about the other. So when it comes to storage on OPZ, you actually have a very quick workflow when it comes to backing up and restoring projects. And it takes just a second to go into content mode, just a second to erase everything on there and replace it or copy it to your computer or whatever you want. And that's just because everything on OPZ storage takes up a whopping 30 megabytes. That's not the case with OPXY, which has 8 gigabytes of storage. And that, like, the factory samples don't count against that. The factory projects are included, but those only take up a few megabytes. So you really have the ability to build out an entire sample library on XY. You have all these one-shots that you can swap out one at a time on XY. And so that's the first thing I want to talk about with sampling, because on OPZ, you basically couldn't do your own drum sampling. What do I mean by that? Well, if you wanted to sample something in and then chop it up, you totally could. So if you wanted to chop up a drum break, that would be fine. But as far as having these samples split between exactly 24 different slots, that's really hard to do without using their drum utility. It's just a whole different world because while it's way harder to swap out a kit and way more precise to be able to do it literally one at a time, it is also just a little bit more, time consuming to do so. And on top of that, if you want to enter sampling on OPZ, you basically need the app unless you're a real weirdo like me and you decide to memorize all this. But even then, it's really easy to accidentally take off one of the factory engines or samples or record over your own sample on accident. So if I were to create a sample here, I could just talk into that, and I don't know if it's actually connected, but I could just talk. Yeah, so we can kind of hear that, and it splits it up automatically, which is something I don't think XY does right now. So that's cool, and that's very helpful, but if I accidentally, while I'm editing that, let's go back to the sample editing mode, while I'm editing, if my finger hits that, well, now we only have that sample that I just recorded, and there's no undo button or way of getting that back. So that's kind of unfortunate in terms of the Z, just because it is so fast that you really kind of need to know all the combinations or else you're likely to kind of mess something up on accident. But on top of that, having to enter a separate sample mode stops the sequencer. So there's absolutely no way to enter sample mode without stopping the sequencer first. And so you can't resample as it's going, and that's not the case on the XY. Yeah, let's load up a track real quick. If I really were feeling like doing this, I could sample this while the sequencer's going. So let's pull up one of the instrument tracks here that has nothing on it. This one has nothing on it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the drum sampler. And so from here, I could hit any of these keys and put something new on it. So I could record from the mic, or I could keep the sequencer going, and as I hit play, I could just hold this record button, and it's just going to be recording it. I think it goes up to 20 seconds, but I've had some kind of weird glitchy behavior that I've seen with this, so, no promises there. Another thing to mention is that this sampler is stereo. So here, we've got that whole thing now, and we're going to put it... It's on that one step, but I think we're in the wrong octave. So there, we've got that sample now. And you could do that while the sequencer's running, and then if you were good enough, it's not really my workflow, but if you wanted to learn how to do it, you could definitely resample on the fly and put that back in here. You can also sample stuff that's coming out of like the tape track and things like that. And so the drum kits are just dramatically different because instead of having either a bunch of kicks or a full kit, which some of these have, you really have the ability to put full samples on each of these. And they can be relatively long samples or they could be relatively short samples. And I don't think there's a way to automatically chop them up, and I can't tell how to copy and paste between keys right now, but I will say that you can load the same sample onto multiple keys and then just change the settings. But note that it's the same filter is used for everything coming out of that instrument track, so you're not going to be able to filter them like differently. So if I take a track and I pull up the drum sampler on it, I am able to pull up a full kit, or I could just pull up, let's make it blank by going to a different engine and then coming back to drum. So now this is going to be a blank kit. And what I'm going to do is if I open up the sample, I can sample into this one key at a time if I want. Or I could go key by key and import different sounds to them. So if I wanted to import some, just a kick that I have from a Native Instruments thingy. Let's do a clap from from the XY. Let's do, a cymbal or whatever. So my point is that you can really just build your own drum kits and then save them how you want. And so you can arrange them however it feels convenient for you. And you don't have to stick to loading small sounds onto this. So let's go ahead and find a slightly longer song that we might be able to, or sound that we can use. No, that's short. Some of these also take a while. So I'm not going to get caught up on that, but my point is that you can store slightly longer samples, but it is just less immediate, which you're actually witnessing right now as well. But let's talk about the synth sampler, because that's a little more similar, but still not quite the same. So I'm going to open up the sampler here, and this is blank, like before. And with this sampler, you can record up to 20 seconds if you want. I don't know. Beautiful. That's not 20 seconds, but you can go up to 20 seconds and it can be stereo. Now the downside is that it doesn't have one of my favorite features on the sampler, on the OPZ's sampler. If I open up my OPZ and I just open up a spot on the lead track and I create a blank sample slot, I can whistle into it too. I'm going to be able to tune it. And any key I press here is just going to play A. And so I can go here and tune it. But there's not much I can do with this now. I can add some noise to it. This parameter does nothing. I can filter it, but there's just way more sound design options, but that is another video. The XY also features a multi-sample engine. So in this project's config settings, I've set it so that track 8 sends to track 14, which is what the field is listening on. And then I've got the field's audio routed into the XY. Next thing I need to do real quick here is to attach them via Bluetooth MIDI. So I'm going to advertise the field. Then I'm going to open up the devices here, and let's go ahead and pair those. Okay, cool. So what I'm going to do now is, as I play notes here on this track, it's going to trigger the MIDI there. Let's pull up the multi-sampler and have it be blank. So it's playing stuff here, but we can't hear it right now. So what I've got to do is I'm going to open up the multi-sampler, and the really cool thing is that it's going to continue to send out MIDI. The less cool thing is that it's still not really responding to the threshold here, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and listen to, let's see if we want it louder. Yeah, let's just give that a try. So let's just do F across some octaves and maybe part of the chromatic scale. So I'm going to go here. And then you kind of have, you might want to wait for a second there, Nope, that doesn't count. Okay, do that same thing. And for the last one, I'm going to go back up and record a couple of the, a bit more of the chromatic scale and stuff. Actually, let me clear that one. Cool, so at this point we should have plenty. You can put up to 24 on there. I don't know how it works with if you can layer them on the same note or whatever. But we have these all together, and like I said, if we're feeling really motivated, we could go through and adjust the length of all these. Let me turn off the field here. So it's sounding a bit jittery, but that's okay. And it's also being sent through the effects, so let's change that so it's not. And if we wanted to, sample by sample, we could go through and adjust the loop points. So you can see in the middle there's this little thing. You can zoom in a little, but not like a helpful amount. I'm really not that good at this, as you can tell. In my mind, I've nailed it, but it sounds terrible, so. Kind of sounds like we've got some portamento on here. Okay, so I did get on a bit of a tangent there, but my point is that there's a lot of differences between the XY and the OPC, and XY just takes everything, takes it to its extreme, and then, of course, it's just a little bit more complicated and requires a little bit more decision-making and planning as a result. So hopefully you found this helpful. I've got more coming in on the way, and thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.